Marketing Plan. Prepared for and presented at the 2017 Square One Entrepreneurship Training Program. Square One is a program of the Center for Emerging Technologies. CET is an affiliate of the Cortex Innovation Community. Square One is funded in part by the Missouri Technology Corporation.
Today we're going to be talking about marketing plans for small businesses. As Christy mentioned, I am a Square One graduate, so I understand what it means to be sitting in the second session of the Monday nights. So this is intended to be interactive. It's going to pull on some concepts that you guys have probably been learning over the last 8 to 9 weeks, but also really level us in the current business world, right? So I'm going to be sharing some examples of some current companies as we talk about these basic concepts of marketing plans, okay? So at any point, ask questions, add comments. Again, this is meant to be interactive so that we can, make it through the night, okay? All right, so we're going to get the basics just right out the way. So what is a marketing plan? A marketing plan is all about your communication strategy with your customer, right? It's about driving your customer to the point of sale. And essentially what it contains is what your product is, who your customer is, and how you will reach and retain your customer. So that's kind of the basic definition of what a marketing plan is. Today, I will be talking about 5 components of a marketing plan. Target market, which I'm sure you guys have heard a little bit about already, your services and products, your pricing strategy, which you probably have also heard about, sales and distribution, advertising and promotion. Okay? Any questions about that before we dive right into it? All right. So the first step of your marketing plan is your target market, right? And it is about researching what your target market is so you know who will buy your product or service. How many of you were in the session where you learned about how to research about your customer at the library, right? This is essentially what this part of the marketing plan is all about. So when you're researching your target market, it's important to envision your ideal customer. What is his or her age? Where do they live? What motivates them? What drives them to the point of sale? If you don't already know the answers to these types of questions, it's important to write down some questions that you want to know so that you're prepared when you go to research at your library. Or there's tons of analytical software out there that you can purchase and do some internal research on your customers too. It's also important to know what trends impact your market and then who is your competition, right? So all these things are great, right? But let's take it into practice, right? So when we think about these 2 companies right here, can somebody tell me what is similar about their target markets?
They both use computers.
Computers? Another one?
Personal computers versus business.
PCs, okay. What's different? Print. More specifically, so someone said printers. Okay. So, sorry? Operating systems. Price point creative, right? So all of these things are essentially what's different about HP's and Apple's target market, as someone mentioned. What trends do you think are currently impacting these markets? Personalization, smartphones, right? The need for individuals to have everything at the tip of their finger, right? What are some other things? Income equality?
Income inequality.
Inequality. Oh, that's a great one. Yes. Yes. Okay. Let's try it. No, these are great answers, and the whole presentation is going to be on the same line so that we can really think about our businesses in the same type of framework so that we differentiate our target market from our competitors. What about these 2? What's similar about the target markets? Sports. Okay. What's different? Football versus baseball. What current trends do you think are impacting one market versus the other one? Who's winning? What about another one? The political climate, right?
One season is over right now, the other's just starting.
Very true. Very true. Do you think trends have an impact on sales? Right. And I think that that's exactly right, because they're thinking about their business model and their marketing strategy. Yes. Okay, good. So I shared these two examples so that you guys can think about, when you think about your competition, what's similar about their target market and your target market? What's different? What are the trends? Okay? So the next step of a marketing plan is about essentially the value proposition. You really want to show the value of your products and services. So typically in a marketing plan, you'll see people really detail out what their product or service is, right? So I imagine that you guys really spent a lot of time on this early on in Square One, but we're going to touch on it again. So why should someone buy your product or service? Some key things to consider when you're writing your marketing plan is, what is the value that you bring that is different from your competitors? What should they expect you to deliver? Why should someone buy your product or use your service, and what additional benefits will they enjoy, right? So let's go back to the Southwest example. What do customers expect from Southwest? What's their value proposition? Cheap?
Lots of flights.
Lots of flights?
On time.
On time? Friendly? Bags fly free? Anybody? I know that gets me every time.
All the same seating.
Yeah, no change fee.
And they have all the same seating, it's no coach or first class.
Man, Southwest is doing an awesome job. Awesome job differentiating themselves from the market, because there's tons of airlines that people can choose to fly, but they're targeting a consumer that wants cheap, on-time flights where they don't have to worry about how many bags they bring. They can fly to many different hubs, right? The hub strategy is kind of, what kicked off Southwest. All right. Anyone know what this company is? Dollar Shave Club. All right, what do customers expect from them?
Razors in the mail.
Razors in the mail.
Cheap.
Cheap. What does it say? No commitment, great shave. Do you think a company like Dollar Shave Club is causing any disruption in the market?
Yeah.
Huge disruption, right? Especially for large companies that might, sell Gillette or Venus. And they've done this by really showing their value proposition up front and really addressing a pain point that their customers have. Okay. So let's shift gears a little bit, because the first two sections I think that you guys probably have a good baseline in, right? But pricing strategy, I think, is probably the most interesting, and I think early stage entrepreneurs probably spend the least amount of time on it, right? So your pricing strategy is how you price your product or service in the market. So the first thing that I would recommend when you think about your pricing strategy is to include what the base price of your product is, and include how it was determined. So everybody knows what fixed costs and variable costs are, right? Fixed costs are things like your rent, maybe some of your utilities. In some cases, if you have full-time employees, it might be wages. Sometimes wages fall into variable costs. Variable costs are things that really fluctuate with your production demands, right? So think about your materials. Think about, like I mentioned, maybe overtime needs based on your demands. Your pricing strategy should definitely take into account how much you're spending, right? That's kind of essential. But on top of that, you should also think about how your price compared to your competitors. I think a lot of early stage entrepreneurs want to come in lower than their competition, right? But if you're lower than your competition, what do you think you need to do to compensate for that? You need to drive efficiencies in your process, right? You need to be more cost effective so that over time, you're still sustainable, right? Because there's probably a reason why your competitors are priced at a certain price point so that they can achieve a certain profit. If you're higher than your competitors, you have to know what additional value that you bring to the table, right? And then some companies change their pricing throughout a season or based on other trends in the market. Your pricing strategy should include how and when you will change your price, right? Make sense? Let's look at another example. iPhones. Can someone tell me what their pricing strategy is for their new phones? What does Apple do when they release a new phone? How is it priced? Very, very high. And then what do?
They make their quantity go to the market.
Sorry, one more time?
I mean, they control, they don't let it go out a lot. They kind of let it go batch, control that.
Yes, they release a limited amount of phones, right, early on at a very high price. Why do you think that's effective? Go ahead.
The people who want it first are the people who will generally pay the most money.
Yes, and that ties back to their target market, right? We talked about Apple and HP up front, right, and how they have very different target markets. Apple knows that probably a majority of their customers want to be able to say, hey, I got the new iPhone, right when it was released, right? But then Apple also knows that they have another segment of customers that are waiting, like me, for that price to tail off over time, right? Which might mean that, the S version is already out, but I might get the first version, and then I'll purchase that product, right? That is essential to Apple's pricing strategy, right? Out the gate, they're high, but then over time, they tail off. Do you think that Apple would be able to have this type of pricing strategy if they released upgrades more frequently? No. All right, let's talk about another favorite of some, Aldi's. What's their pricing strategy? Very low. What makes this strategy work? How many people have ever shopped at Aldi? What makes it work?
Nothing fancy in the store.
Nothing fancy in the store, okay.
A lot of the products, I think, are their own brands.
Mm-hmm.
But they have surprising things in there too.
Yeah.
Replace all the labor costs by making the customer do the labor.
Making the customer do the labor, that is essential. And why is that essential?
Still me?
Anyone?
Still you.
Because they're thinking about their fixed and variable costs, right? And they can accomplish a lower price by cutting their operating costs, right? Do you think that they would be able to have the same pricing strategy if they adopted the same operating strategy as, let's say, Target? No, right? So I share these two examples because, again, I think we have a tendency early on to want to go low into the market, which is okay, right? Because you might want to get early adoption from your customers to go in with a low price, but then realize over time you might want to raise your price to maybe the midpoint of the market so that you can still operate and be sustainable, okay? All right. So the next part of the marketing plan is the sales and distribution. This is how the transaction will take place between you and your customer. For this portion of the plan, you want to include how you plan on selling your product and what are the distribution channels. So are you selling through wholesalers? Do you have a storefront? Are you online? Do you have sales reps selling your product? Something also very important to keep in mind is how long it will take your product to actually get to the customer, right? So think about lead times. And then also, how will your customer pay? Amazon. What makes their sales and distribution strategy unique? Let's talk about their sales strategy first.
Quick delivery.
Quick delivery. But where do they sell?
Everything.
They sell everything. So they sell online, exactly. They don't have a storefront. They have a website, right? And if you think about Amazon, they sell many things, but one of the main things they sell is a subscription, right? They sell a Prime subscription, and in return, they offer that you don't pay shipping costs and for that 2-day delivery, right? That's kind of their sales strategy. What's their distribution strategy? Does anybody know what Amazon does?
Yeah, hubs throughout the country.
Yes. They have third-party, like, warehousing where they can, like, look among all the warehouses, look for the cheaper price, and then essentially tell that warehouse to ship that product in their packaging, right? What is the advantage of this strategy? Convenience.
Lower overhead.
Lower overhead. Okay. Does anyone know what this company is? Birchbox? What makes their sales and distribution strategy unique?
It's not used anymore, is it?
Say more.
Well, they were one of the first.
Yeah, they were one of the first.
They do like other people's products.
Right, they sell samples of other people's products, yes. But yeah, a lot of people are adopting that. I think Sephora even has a box now too.
Is that a subscription service? Isn't that a subscription?
It is a subscription service. So they sell a subscription. It's a $10 a month subscription. You get makeup samples or cosmetic samples every month for $10 a month, right? What is the advantage of this strategy? They don't have to pay for manufacturing. Excellent. But do you think that anything in this strategy impacts their lead time? Oh, go ahead.
Well, if they're sending out the same box to all of their customers, and they know who their customers are beforehand, then it's easier to manage your inventory because with everybody else, even Amazon, they're wondering, well, how much of this is going to sell? And how much should I keep in my warehouse in case someone wants to buy it? They don't have to do that.
They don't have to do that, right? That's an excellent point. So for your businesses, are there unique things in your sales and distribution strategies that you can do to help with your marketing strategy? Okay. So I feel like I've actually really flown through this, but yeah. So the last portion is the advertising and promotions plan. So this is how will you communicate with your prospects and your customers. So this is, I think, what people traditionally think about when they think about marketing plans, right? It's about how you advertise your product or service, what goals do you want to achieve through social media, through print, through radio, direct mail, your website. You also want to make sure that you include your budget and then what return you expect to get on whatever you budgeted for. Also include what content and marketing materials you will use. Like, are you going to use flyers, videos, coupons? Like I mentioned, I think this is probably what people traditionally think about, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk more technically about what should be a part of your advertising and promotions plan. So I think a lot of people always want to think about conversion and the point of sale, right? But your advertising and promotion plan should include campaigns for all different stages of the sales funnel. So this is a very specific example for social media marketing. So you can tell that the goals are very different for customers at different stages of the sales funnel, right? So when you're designing your advertising and promotions plan, you need to be clear on whether you're trying to raise awareness and get reach on Facebook, or if you're trying to convert your customers to the point of purchase on your website, right? So I included this just so that you guys can see that it's more than just the point of sale, right? Your campaign should include all different levels, okay? So, like I said, I flew through that, but any questions? Yes?
You mentioned earlier that not only what you change your price to, but when you change your price is a factor. Can you give an example of where, like a company that uses a certain time of year or whatever that how is determined?
Yeah, so I think,
or when it is determined?
yeah, so I think Amazon is a good example of a company that changes prices often. I read an article probably a few weeks ago that compared Amazon to some traditional retailers around like the holiday season, and they changed their prices. I think it was like 10 to 12 times more frequently than like Walmart during the holiday season, right? And I believe that it's because they have more analytics to see like what the behaviors are of their customers as they're browsing. But that's an example of when people might change in real time. But my example with iPhones is an example of when people would change, a company might change it over time, right? They're high in the beginning, but then after they reach their peak of customers who, want to have the cell phone from a status standpoint, they start to reach people who want to buy it when it's more practically priced. Seasons might also dictate when you change the price of a product.
Yeah, so the classic example also, is airline seat pricing, so, right? You book way in advance and lock yourself in, you get a good price, then the prices go up, and then right immediately before the flight, if the flight isn't full, they'll sell those seats really cheap, right? So there's something that actually goes, starts low, goes high, and then goes low again, right?
Yeah.
Because why? Because once the plane takes off, they can't sell any more of the seats, obviously, right? So.
Right. Yes, that's a great example. Any other questions? No questions.
So a lot of times we think about the marketing plan as being separate from the sales, and you had talked about conversion in your last slide.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit more about just how the marketing and sales pieces are actually integrated or should be integrated? I know not everybody does it that way, but
Yes.
and you made a point too earlier about the delivery of your product being part of the cycle. So could you take us sort of through that just so that we have a better sense of how those things are all connected?
Yes. So for the first question, for all of your marketing objectives, you should be clear on what your goals are, right? So like I mentioned, the sale part is the conversion part, but you should have goals for every step of the funnel, right? And periodically you should be I'm just going to use social because this is the realm that I tend to play in with my clients. But for example, if you are executing a Facebook advertisement online, right? You know that you want to achieve a certain reach, a number of clicks. On some frequency, you should be reviewing the analytics on Facebook to see if you achieve those goals, and then reviewing your analytics on your website to see if you're actually getting the conversion that you expect. You should then compare that to your plan and say, hey, I thought that I was going to be able to achieve these goals because I set these strategies. Did I achieve them or did I not achieve them? And if you did not, you adjust, right? And I think that was Christy's question. Like, it's all connected, right? You have your business goals, then you have your marketing objectives that are linked to your business goals. From there, you define your strategies that you're using on all different avenues of marketing, whether it's print or online. You execute your strategies, and then you see if they work. It's just an endless cycle, right? And then from a product delivery standpoint, what I was getting at there is that sometimes I think a lot of you have consumer goods products, right? So you take some time to actually manufacture your product, right? Which means that someone might pay you up front, they might just put an order in, but it might take you some time to actually create the product and ship it out to the customer. You want to be transparent in your marketing plan about how long that process will take and what the steps of that process is. You want to be transparent with your customer too, so that they're not expecting it up front if you can't actually deliver, or you want to have enough inventory in your system so that you can deliver on the demand that you currently have, so that you don't have customers waiting, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
about the Apple, I know they have a specific marketing structure, and they also have a specific customer they look at. When they sell their brand new phone for $800 or $900 and people buy that, are they not creating demand for it also through the smaller markets that come behind the people they call innovators when they buy that?
You mean the
And
small?
does it create a false demand for it because you made 900 phones, you knew that at least 800 people were going to buy them, so you have 100 left, and then more people start to hurry to get this phone, and then you have people waiting for the phone to come back for you to make more. Does that hurt a business specifically, or does that help them to, I guess, show themselves as the industry leader in technology or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think.
know if I said that right, but I'm just,
I mean, I haven't looked at Apple's financials to know if it's working or if it's not working, but I'm just going to guess that it is working, right? That the demand that they create by, advertising so ahead of when they actually release the phone to create buzz and demand and reviews actually helps them in the long run when they finally release the product. I don't know if people still wait in lines outside for Apple phones anymore, but I mean, I think that that's proof that it's working. I think another strategy that some companies probably have is that they might not have everything like on shelf, right? They might just have a lot of inventory in their system or like waited to be released in the second round if they feel like the demand is greater than the amount that they have on shelf. Yeah, but good question.
So this idea is, actually, I think they call it sometimes false scarcity.
Yeah.
So, so that's for the Apple phone, that's one example. Another great one is concert tickets, right? So
Yes.
frequently, you go, your favorite band is coming, people stand in line, whatever, and so actually a really substantial number of tickets actually go through brokers who do this, or scalpers as they're called. And, it's all basically to kind of create some kind of, sense of, oh no, the tickets are running out, I better run out and buy my tickets now. And so these are all forms of price discrimination to give, trying to, get people to pay as much as they can possibly get people to pay as much as the market will bear.
Right.
People are always thinking about this. That's funny, so many of the people in this class, I really respect and honor this. They want to offer the customer a really good value, so I don't know how many of you have earnestly said, yeah, I want to offer this at a really low price, right? So a big part of marketing is actually the opposite of that. It's trying to figure out the highest possible price you can get people to pay, and having sophisticated strategies to, let's just call it what it is, manipulate people into paying more by creating a sense of urgency, a sense of pride and social prestige from having the it phone, and then false scarcity and other different forms of price discrimination. It's across many different industries.
And I would say that most analysts would look at Apple, and if they weren't skimming off, meaning charging a premium price for their early adopters who are perpetually early adopters, 10 years later, they're perpetually early adopters. The critique would be that they don't understand their market and they're leaving money on the table.
Right.
Because those people have basically signaled, you can charge me pretty much whatever you want and I will buy it. And the rest of us have pretty much said, and we're all gonna wait, and then you can sell to us. And it's like we have this, like, I know that you know that I know,
Yeah.
right? But that's exactly what they're doing. And I think the business critique would be to do otherwise, would be to leave a lot of money on the table.
Well, and it's a very sophisticated strategy too, because what does charging so much and making so much money allow them to do? Exactly. So that way they're able to, they're able to have what looks like a cutting edge device and be ahead of their competition each time because they pay more for R&D. So it's part of a long-term brand promise, really.
Yes.
And very cleverly done, I must say.
Yeah.
Well, they did that.
By the way, Apple fan, sorry.
They did it with channel partnership in mobile, which is how they were able to keep charging high dollars for longer periods of time. Because they had to keep on financing. Most people bought iPhones cheaply, not because Apple was selling them cheaply.
possible we're executing that on a smaller scale? Because I know it takes an awful lot of advertising dollars to go ahead and build it up and do that.
I would say that it does take a lot of effort in actually building your brand to create that type of demand. And I think Apple is a very specific example of a pricing strategy, but there's lots of companies that do hurt when their product is not on the shelf to be purchased immediately, right? Because the competitor is right there. Like think of just normal consumer goods, right? If you go to the store and you really need something and your favorite product isn't there, a lot of the time you'll grab the next product, right? So you have to really understand your target market and what's driving them to make the decisions that they do. So for your business, for example, who's your target market? Is it someone who, wants to have the latest and greatest and they're waiting for your product to launch?
It's a directory site.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty much business owners.
Okay. So, I mean, you can probably launch maybe a web-only campaign through YouTube videos and Facebook campaigns through your network over time where people can anticipate the launch of your site. But ongoing, the upgrades of your site, I'm not sure what the different up versions of your site will be similar to a new Apple phone being released, right? Unless it's a new feature. Sometimes you'll see companies market a new feature coming out and then, release it just to a select beta group of users and then over time release it to the public. You might benefit from doing something like that.
Those are good ideas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So small businesses that charge a lot, a great example would be restaurants. So, how many people here know about niche? Right, so when it was over on, it was in Soulard, I think, right? The original one, man, it was super, super expensive, right? So then they moved to Clayton. It was still expensive, but they lowered their prices actually compared to other restaurants. Why? Because they were no longer the it restaurant anymore, right? They had to compete with a lot of different places. And do you know what they're charging now? Well, nothing, because they're out of business. So, right, so they decided not to continue with that brand. Did that mean that restaurateur went out of business? Believe me, no, right? You got plenty of other projects, right? So that's a brand that, was kind of built to be obsolete ultimately because it ultimately got edged out of the premium market where that brand made sense.
And, but using that same model going in the other direction, Wolfgang Puck in the 80s, 90s, whatever it was, started Spago. That was the it restaurant in Los Angeles. He moved from there to more middle-class restaurants. Using the leverage of the Spago success, he then introduced a line of foods that were available in grocery stores. I mean, went down market from an availability and a perception standpoint, but you think of the turns. I mean, you're getting an awful lot of volume out of the grocery channel compared to running one restaurant in Hollywood. And the next thing you know, he's an empire, he's got food shows, he's got specialty restaurants in Vegas, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So,
Great example.
You can leverage it into something else.
Yeah, this kind of thing happens in women's apparel all the time. Brands start up super upmarket, and a decade goes by and they're available in Target.
Yeah. Isaac Mizrahi,
Yeah.
I mean, Isaac Mizrahi was a couture designer, and you could buy his clothing in Target now, and he's no longer on the couture front.
Yeah, and so that's there's nothing, that doesn't mean that he made a mistake. It was very carefully thought out. He knew that his brand was going to lose cachet over time and built a brand strategy where the idea was just, well, let's find the right place where, my brand's now going to be affordable enough for the next group of consumers who now can afford the product. It's still going to be a stretch for those consumers, right? And then a few years later, okay, now let's play it in another channel or another distribution outlet where it's going to be priced, where it's still going to be a stretch for people, still going to be a prestige item, right? But it's all relative. So, okay, but we did get away from the local example, which was the question over here. This is pretty tough to do.
Yeah.
I mean, restaurants, it works. There are just some categories that don't lend themselves to cachet pricing, right? Where people are, pretty much looking for a good price. Business to business, pretty tough. You can't sell cachet. You might be able to get away with something that says quality, right? But generally speaking, they're going to be up on price in a business to business kind of setting.
Well, I think actually we're sitting somewhere where there's a price cachet to be a member of CIC.
Okay, that's interesting. Your point is it's more expensive to rent here than it is elsewhere?
Yeah, sure.
No, it's good.
Oh.
I don't know if you're upstairs in an office, it's.
But no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if
And-
you're looking for, in St. Louis, real estate is cheap.
Yeah.
And if you choose to locate in the Vortex District, particularly in a building
You are going to pay
managed by
a premium.
CIC, you are paying a premium. Absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see how long that lasts.
Yeah.
You had a question?
I was gonna say, commenting on that is,
By the way, paying a premium and getting a value.
Yeah. It was not an accusatory
And the
point,
check
I was
is in the
just
middle,
saying,
and I'm
this
a
is,
CET man, so I
this
know
is
what
the,
to say
this
about
is
it.
the iPhone of offices.
I was gonna say that my gut is that there's a difference between, are we talking about a premium brand, or is Office and Cortex, any of these a premium category?
So
And
Cortex
is
is
there
a
really a difference
brand.
between premium category and premium brand?
Yeah, no, so Cortex is a brand, and so it's not, we're not, the Cortex district isn't saying, yeah, you should come here because we cost more. They're saying you should come here because you get more, right? And by the way, for startup businesses, all the points of interconnection that the Cortex district offers, that's a for real thing. And you can see a lot of very savvy and companies that could afford to go anywhere, i.e. hello Microsoft. They're coming to the Cortex district because even though they're paying more than they could, in South St. Louis or wherever, right? They're recognizing that there's a better value proposition here. So price, it's sometimes you're just paying more for the prestige. Hello, talk to my wife after one of her shopping trips. I mean, okay, that's my perception anyway, right? But then, there's also a bundle of things that it's not just the real estate, it's everything that comes along with it.
And I would argue that, say, if we're talking about the category of co-working, for example, co-working itself is not a prestige category, yet there is a prestige brand within that category,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, we may be splitting hairs to some degree, but I would say in that particular example, no, it's not the whole category. It's one brand within a category that is distinguishing itself. So if there were 15 CICs, right, somebody has to start lowering their price because there's only so many people that can be served at that level, and then there have to be differentiators where price is one of them, right? And perhaps value changes depending on that price. But we're all not going to be able to adopt, pricing strategies are not directly transferable just because we want them to be.
So,
Right, and we're all in different markets where sometimes there's a much greater price sensitivity, where we have to understand that if we're going into a market where there's a very small differential between paying this price point and this price point, the minute it goes higher, customers of all ilks stop buying, versus others where you can pretty much charge what you want and there's really no sensitivity, meaning the price point increasing or if your income decreasing doesn't mean that you stop buying because it's either a necessity or it's considered an essential part of, a lot of times we talk about brands like Tide. I know people who buy Tide even though there are a number, dozens of alternate choices that are much less expensive that will clean your clothes just as well, but they are wedded to that brand. And Tide is almost price insensitive. Under no logical premise, right? There are other situations where most of us aren't going to turn off our electricity even if the price goes up because we have no alternative, right? Mark, you have a...
Yeah, so asterisk next to that, I mean, there are some commodity categories that will surprise you. 10 years ago, the average price of a family-sized icebox was $50. And now people are falling all over themselves to buy a Yeti. The high end of Yeti's product line is nothing more than a large piece of blow molded plastic that has a retail price point of close to $1,300.
I want a Yeti, don't dash my home.
You can
Please
get them in,
don't tell my wife about a Yeti.
you can get them in pink.
I don't
And what's
want them in
Harry's
pink.
address, so we can make
That,
sure that
nothing is pink sell, that doesn't sell a damn thing to me.
blue, brown, or white.
Awesome. Other questions, thoughts, comments on marketing, sales, pricing? Yes, Philip?
I just want to make a point for promotion. I don't know how it may work on certain business owners, but think about Uber. You know, they said, hey, if you share this with your friends, you can, both of you guys can get a discount on your next ride. So think about that with your pricing and promotion strategy. Can your customers potentially help you sell your product?
Good point.
Another thing to keep in mind is if part of your offer is a guarantee or a warranty, those all have real costs associated with them as well, so you need to be able to factor that in. So just as you're building in your cost for what it actually costs you to market or to sell or to deliver the product, there may be parts of your strategy, your selling strategy, that have costs to them as well, even if they're not upfront. But if somebody redeems that warranty or takes you up on that guarantee, you're gonna have to make good on it. So there's different strategies there too. And then is that offer a differentiator in the market?
Yeah,
No
and
one else is guaranteeing, if no one else is providing a warranty, that may be a differentiator in what you're doing as well.
And for the IT businesses, I also would think about your customer support and the cost associated with that when you think about your pricing, right? So any service-based company, a lot of the time, your clients are going to want to, you know, call you at whatever hour, ask you all sorts of questions as they onboard into your product or service. So definitely consider that.
Recognizing when your company could potentially see a trend outside of what your normal business model was. You used to see the 1 gallon jugs of Elmer's glue like on the bottom shelf. Now every time you walk into any store, there's a whole display of them because all these kids are making slime.
Yeah.
And to be
That's a
able
great
to
point.
say, I'm Elmer's, and we used to sell 9 of these a month, and now we're selling 10,000, making sure that you're in a position to start making 1 gallon jugs of glue. They aren't just for the art teacher anymore. And the same with Tide, right? I mean, it's all tied in glue. My bill is outrageous.
No, that's an excellent point.
I'm sure the people were like, what's going on?
All right, any other questions? All right. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you so much.